In the pitch-black, suffocating dark of night on July 30, 1945, a maritime catastrophe began to unfold in the deep waters of the Philippine Sea. It would become one of the most chilling disasters in naval history, ultimately claiming the lives of over 870 men and leaving an indelible, bleeding scar on the American consciousness. The vessel at the center of this tragedy was the USS Indianapolis, a decorated Portland-class heavy cruiser. Unbeknownst to most of her crew, she had just completed a mission of existential importance, sprinting across the Pacific to deliver the enriched uranium and key components of the Little Boy atomic bomb to the island of Tinian. With her top-secret cargo successfully offloaded, the cruiser was now steaming routinely and alone toward the Philippines, entirely unaware of the horror waiting in the dark ahead. In a fateful decision driven by the extreme urgency of the wartime schedule and a fatal misjudgment of the route's safety, the Indianapolis was ordered to sail completely unprotected, entirely without a destroyer escort. Navy Command believed the transit corridor was a secure backwater, largely cleared of the Japanese threat. This bureaucratic oversight left the massive cruiser blind to underwater dangers, cutting through the waves without any anti-submarine warfare vessels to screen her path or listen to the depths below.
Compounding the danger, the Indianapolis was maintaining a straight course, actively neglecting to perform the standard, jagged evasive steering maneuvers known as zigzagging. Due to limited visibility and a profound, misplaced confidence that the Philippine Sea was clear of active enemy combatants, the bridge prioritized speed and fuel conservation over tactical evasion. Little did Captain McVeigh know, lurking silently in the ink-black depths directly ahead was the I-58, lethal B-3 type Japanese submarine commanded by the experienced Mochitsuru Hashimoto.
At exactly 12:15 a.m., the silence of the ocean was violently shattered. Having spotted the unescorted cruiser purely by chance, Commander Hashimoto unleashed a lethal spread of 6 Type 95 torpedoes. 2 found their mark with devastating precision. The first hit blew off the ship's bow, and the second ripped into her midship near the fuel tanks, triggering a cataclysmic chain reaction of fire, metal, and water. The mighty cruiser was instantly paralyzed, a communication severed before a single distress signal could be successfully broadcasted. The internal damage was insurmountable. Seawater rushed into the gaping wounds of the hull at an terrifying velocity, causing the ship to list heavily onto her starboard side. With the bow gone and the ship rapidly going under, Captain Charles B. McVeigh III was left with no choice but to give the agonizing order to abandon ship. In the pitch black, choking on thick fuel oil and blinded by smoke, hundreds of terrified men fought their way out of the tilting metal labyrinth and plunged into the dark Pacific.
The ship went down with terrifying speed, vanishing into the abyss in a mere 12 minutes. Because the explosions had obliterated the electrical systems, no SOS went out, and Naval Command remained completely oblivious to the sinking. Approximately 900 survivors were left stranded in the open ocean with almost no life rafts, food, or fresh water. They floated helplessly in life vests, covered in toxic fuel oil, entirely forgotten as the vast, indifferent Pacific threatened to swallow them whole.
As the sun rose over the horizon, a new and far more agonizing nightmare began. The blood from the wounded and the frantic splashing of hundreds of men acting as a dinner bell, drawing hundreds of oceanic whitetip and tiger sharks from miles around. For 4 horrific days and nights, the survivors floated in a real-life hell. The sharks circled relentlessly, systematically picking off the weak, the dead, and anyone who drifted away from the group. The water frequently turned red with blood as the terrified men could do nothing but scream and watch their crewmates vanish into the jaws of apex predators. Back on the home front and in regional headquarters, a shocking breakdown in military communication occurred. Due to bureaucratic errors and a rigid reporting system, the ship's failure to arrive at her destination in Leyte was completely ignored. Operational offices assumed she had been delayed or rerouted, and her non-arrival was never flagged as an emergency. For days, while hundreds of men were actively being eaten alive or dying of dehydration in the sun, Navy High Command had absolutely no idea the ship was even missing.
Salvation arrived entirely by accident on the 4th day. A PV-1 Ventura pilot on a routine anti-submarine patrol spotted an enormous oil slick stretching across the ocean and, upon diving lower, was horrified to see hundreds of men waving frantically from the water. An emergency rescue operation was instantly mobilized. A Catalina flying boat landed in the high swells against orders to act as a temporary life raft, and the destroyer USS Cecil Doyle rushed to the scene to pull the final, skin-blistered survivors out of their watery tomb.
The cruel irony of the Indianapolis tragedy is inextricably tied to the fate of the atomic bomb. Just days after the final survivors were pulled from the water, on August 6, 1945, the B-29 superfortress Enola Gay dropped that little boy a bomb on Hiroshima, using the exact components the Indianapolis had died to deliver. While the world celebrated the technological breakthrough that would swiftly end the Pacific War, the horrific sacrifice of the men who transported it remained shrouded in military censorship and heavy grief. Out of a crew of nearly 1,200 men, only 316 walked out of the ocean alive. Plagued by horrific chemical burns from the fuel oil, severe saltwater poisoning, and profound psychological trauma, their long road to recovery was just beginning. The haunting memories of watching their brothers in arms get torn apart by sharks or succumb to madness would torture the survivors for the rest of their lives, leaving them with invisible scars that no medal could ever heal.
Seeking a scapegoat to deflect public outrage over their own systemic communication failures, the U.S. Navy took the highly controversial step of court-martialing Captain Charles B. McVeigh III. He became the only ship commander in American history to be court-martialed for losing his vessel to wartime enemy action. Though he survived the sharks, the crushing weight of unearned guilt, combined with decades of hostile letters from the grieving families of his dead crew, finally took its toll. In 1968, Captain McVeigh ended his own life, a final, delayed casualty of the I-58's torpedoes.
The shattering loss of the USS Indianapolis forced the Navy to completely overhaul its outdated wartime safety doctrines. New mandatory regulations were quickly enacted, ensuring that no capital ship could ever sail unescorted through potentially hostile waters again, and distress beacon redundancies were aggressively modernized. The tragedy fundamentally reshaped modern maritime search and rescue protocols, buying a legacy of safety with the lives of nearly 900 brave American sailors. Decades later, the heavy saga of the USS Indianapolis remains a haunting cautionary tale of wartime hubris, institutional negligence, and profound human resilience. Her rusted hull now rests under 3 miles of water, a quiet and sacred monument to duty and sacrifice. The survivors fought to successfully clear Captain McVeigh's name posthumously in 2000, ensuring that history would remember the truth. As the sun sets over the endless, deceptively calm waves of the Pacific, the echo of taps reminds us never to forget the cost of the peace we inherit.